أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى ابن أمه وبسيه يعصوب الدين إمام المتقين قائد غر المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب وعلى أولاده المعصومين المنتجبين لا سيما سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا مهدي هذه الأمة وقاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري روحي وأرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء واللعن دائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. May Allah accept your deeds. Brothers, تقبل الله أعمالكم. Assalamu alaikum, my respected brothers and sisters. Inshallah, you're doing well. First and foremost, I'm really glad to be with you, dear brothers and sisters, today again in another episode of principles of faith, or in Arabic language we can call it usuluddin. But prior to getting started, let me tell you something and let me share some critical point with you, dear brothers and sisters. As you know, we've started such a discourse by ourselves, right? So you have to know we are completely independent, okay? We don't belong to some community, we don't belong to some party, we don't belong to some hezbollah, we don't belong to some, political community or party or kind of, association and so on and so forth. Not at all. Rather, we are completely independent. If we are here as, if you remember, in the first session, I mentioned the main purpose and goals of holding such a discourse, right? That, to recapitulate, we are here to acquire our knowledge, right? And try to grow up in religion. That's it, right? And try to make more familiar with the usuluddin, the principles of faith. Okay, so if you sometimes see some voices from this and that, from that side or this side, make sure we don't belong to somebody or some association and institute and so on. Not at all. Okay, and what brings us the discourse is to get familiar with God, with prophets, and try, beyond and despite of any sect and caste. Okay, for example, if you're Christian, no matter. If you're Shia, it's okay. If you're Sunni, it's okay. No matter, right? Because of God is the same. God is the same issue, isn't it? So we try to get familiar with God, to know God, right? And inshallah, step by step, we can go through some more subjects in this respect. Okay, that's why we try to find out some more in common. Okay, and without a doubt, the most common is God. For this reason, we started from God. Okay, it was really important issue. Okay, however, it's related to our topic. But I was wondering, I need to tell you, brothers and sisters, in this session. Okay, in the previous session, we provided some arguments for the existence of God through narrations and ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. Okay, but what exactly we should today is go to the next step, okay, which is called attributes of God. Attributes of God um, is really important issue because of it's related to essence of God. Please bear with me. You know, attributes of God classified under two main categories: الصفات الثبوتية and الصفات السلبية in Arabic language. Sometimes, you know, we need to get to know the Arabic terminology, right? Because of when you hear this, for example, expression الصفات الثبوتية, what does it mean? You get confused, bewildered, right? For this reason, I try to make you familiar with this kind of expressions. I mean, Arabic expression. And when you, do you know, when you ran into to some kind of expressions, for example, you're reading some papers, you're reading some magazines, some books, Islamic books, and so on. So you're okay because of, you know, as-sifatu thubuti, what does it mean, right? As-sifatu sabi, what does that mean? As-sifatu thubuti, or we can translate it into affirmative attributes, okay, or positive or affirmative attributes of God. As-sifatu salbi, what does it mean? Or salbiya, as-sifatu salbi means negative attributes or attributes. Okay, it is plural. So the definition of as-sifatu thubutiya, as you see, the name is crystal clear, right? That it says affirmative attributes, affirmative qualities. It means a type of, okay, types of attributes that we can ascribe to God. For instance, al-khaliq, creator. God is creator, right? God is a razaq, sustainer, or razaq, or razaq, no matter. God is provider, right? God is provider. As-Sami', Al-Basir, Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim, Qadir, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are types of attributes should be called as sifatu thubutiyya. It means you can ascribe them to God. Okay, and it is completely true. But on contrast, we have as-sifatu salbi, right? As-sifatu salbi, or negative attributes, you cannot ascribe or attribute to God. Why? Because of God has no such these attributes. For example, when we name God Al-Khaliq, right? It means on the other side is makhluq, right? We have creator and creature, okay? So when God is creator, absolutely he's not creature, right? So creature is kind of is one of the sifatu salbi, a negative attribute, okay? Or another example is, for example, we can call God as alim, right? God is alim. So on the other side, we have al-jahil, right? Ignorant. So ignorant is one of the sifatu salbi, negative attribute that you cannot ascribe to God. It is really important to know, however, in parentheses, dear brothers and sisters, we are not here to emphasize and focus on Arabic expressions and structures, and after that, because of there is no any exam, okay, it is not a kind of seminary school or academic one, no, not at all. as I promised you in the first session, and it is our policy in this course, completely entire course, inshallah, we can try to consider it, that we try to convey any and every knowledge, I mean religious knowledge, through simple language. Okay, that's why if you didn't get a sifatu subuti, or would be tough for you to memorize it. No need, no need. God is God. God has no need to call him as God is we can call God just by sifatu thubuti, not sifatu. So no, it's okay. Just we are here to get familiar with God, with his attributes, with his essence. Okay, it is just the case, and it is what's needed. So as-sifatu thubuti, okay. So as-sifatu thubuti, as-sifatu salbi. As-sifatu thubuti would be divided into two parts and branches: as-sifatu zat, as-sifatu fi'l. As-sifatu zat, or we can call it in English language, inner attributes, okay, or inner attributes. And on the other side, as-sifatul fi'l, we can call it outer attributes of God. So what's the difference? What's the difference between as-sifatul zat, as-sifatul fi'l? Please bear with me. As-sifatul zat, there are kind of as-sifat attributes, right, that belong to God in his essence. Okay, it means when you want to talk about it, no need to picture, no need to imagine something else. For example, as a tangible example, God is alim, right? When you call God as alim, so God is alim, it's okay. Okay, but when you call God as khaliq, right? God is khaliq, it means creator, right? When you call God as a creator, you have to imagine on the other side a creature. Khaliq of what? Creator of what? Absolutely, there is a kind of creation, right? And the creator creates something. Okay, that's why we need to imagine two sides. Okay, one side is God as a creator, and on the other side we have creature. That's why in this category and this classification, we can call the first attributes as sifatu zat, and no need to imagine, no need to picture but God. But for the second attributes, I mean as-sifatul fi'l, we have to picture something else. Okay, so let's continue. Today we are supposed to focus on as-sifatul thubuti and as-sifatul zat. It is one of the branch of as-sifatul thubuti that we can ascribe to God. Okay, and initially, step by step, we go through to touch some more attributes and cover all attributes of God in this regard. And inshallah, step by step, you can understand which one is okay to ascribe to God and which one is wrong to ascribe to God. Actually, there is some points, some critical points before starting talking and discussing about the first attribute of God, which is eternity and or infinity. You have to know some points. Please listen carefully. Please pay your attention to these points. You know, when we say we have God and we have attributes of God, it doesn't mean these attributes is something and God is something else. This point is really significant point. That's why please listen carefully. When we say God has some attributes, okay, it doesn't mean God is something and his attributes is something else. Okay? Rather, there is nothing but God. Okay? So it is impossible to to take away this kind of attributes from God. Exactly the essence of God equals at his attributes. Catch it? For this reason, we cannot call God as a complex thing, or as a, he has some component, not at all. He has completely basir, right? He's simple one, not murakkab. This this point is really significant point. God is not murakkab. God is not complex. God has no any component, has no any item and pieces at all. Rather, God is basir. God is simple. Okay? God is just one thing, which is called God. Not, we can imagine God is something and his attribute is something else. For example, if God is alim, if God is, adil, right? I mean, justice. God is just, and this justice is something, and God has this one. No, 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 no. Right? That's why they're completely clinging, we can call it, and gluing to God, which is not okay to take them away from God. Do you know why? What's the reason behind it? Why we say this one? The logic and the logical point of this kind of belief is that if you say God is something and this attribute is something else, you have to imagine this attribute, no matter which attribute, whatever you can imagine, whatever you wish. This attribute is eternal. It means it's qadim, right? It means it has not been created by God, right? It has no any beginning point, okay? It is completely infinite, right? And and eternal. If you say this one, so you have to admit from beginning was something that was not God, which is called this sifat, this attribute. Okay? And if you say it is not from beginning, and after a little while, after a long while, God caught it, okay, God gained it, you have to admit a big limitation for God. Because if you can imagine sometimes that God has God existed at that time, but without any attributes. Okay, and after that, God caught it. So if you remember, I don't know in which episode exactly, but we prove that God is completely al-wujudul kamil, right? A absolute and perfect being in a sense. He's not needy at all. He's completely needless. But you can imagine if this one, it means God is needy. God needs to these attributes. That's why we say, and I think, a whole school of thoughts in this regard say, we cannot imagine something, attributes of God is are something, and the essence of God is something else, right? It's really a significant point. That's why Amir al-Mu'minin سلام الله عليه في خطبة في النهج البلاغة الخطبة الأولى, sermon 1, he says, listen up, it is really nice one. فَمَنْ وَصَفَ اللَّهَ فَقَدْ قَرَنَهُ. Whenever describes God, absolutely he's gonna take some kind of وَمَنْ قَرَنَهُ فَقَدْ فَنَّاهُ. And whoever goes to take a peer, a partner for him, without a doubt, is politics, right? He's not monotheist anymore. Okay, it is polytheism. It's a kind of polytheism point of view. وَمَنْ ثَنَّاهُ فَقَدْ جَزَّاهُ. And whoever now, and it means makes peer for God, without a doubt, indeed, فَقَدْ جَزَّاهُ, goes to name God as a murakkab, right? And it means God is complex. God is not basit. Okay, God has some components, has some items and pieces. وَمَنْ جَزَّاهُ فمن جزاه فقد شرك بالله العلي العظيم فقد كفر. And without a doubt, eventually he's not a Muslim. So we believe, as he describes himself, as his identification in Quran, just refer to Quran and you can see this really great and mesmerizing surah of Quran, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, right? It is ID card of God, okay? Identification of God. You can recite it and enjoy. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. If we want to get familiar with God, if we want to pick up some attributes for God, just we need to refer to Quran, to some narration, authentic narrations, and absolutely prior to referring, we have to imagine, okay, and and look into and examine through our mind, our intellect, right? Let's keep let's keep going on and take a look at the first attribute of God as as-sifatu thubuti, as-sifatu zat. It is God is azali, okay, or abadi, okay, eternity and infinity. God is eternal. God is infinite. Why? Why we should believe that God is eternal? Why should we believe that God is infinite? There is a kind of a huge and massive argument and kind of controversial issue among Muslims, specifically when we refer to some historical texts. We can find it out easily that they were discussing about the Quran, that Quran is eternal or not, Quran is qadim or not. Probably some of you, I don't know, believe in it, okay, that Quran is qadim. But in a school of thought, Ahlul Bayt, a school of thought, when we refer to narrations, we at first, for example, Imam al-Hadi, Salamullah alayh, it states, stop talking over it, because of it is a really useless issue. It is really useless topic to discuss, to argue. So what's the reason behind it? What kind of consequence, what kind of benefits you can get? Okay, that's why you stop talking over it. No need to have conflict and to talk over everything. For example, about this and that, I don't know the name, the mother's name of that prophet. So what? Just imagine I know. So what? Okay, we believe God is eternal, and he was the first one. Okay, the first thing we can call it, the first thing in the world. But before that was nothing, and after that is nothing. Okay? وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. God is eternal. That's why if I don't know, you've heard such a this topic regarding Quran. Quran is Qadim, Quran is not Qadim, I mean eternal is not eternal, something like this. Actually, to be honest with you, brothers and sisters, please stop thinking over it. There is, I think, no benefits to get. Let's continue and talk about the meaning of eternity. What does it mean? When we say God is eternal, when we say Allah or God is infinite, what does it mean? What does it mean? It means constantly has been there. Okay? So why? Why we say we cannot imagine some time that at that time God didn't exist? Why? Even we can say this one or we cannot. If you remember some session, I mentioned this issue that some concepts, okay, some concepts, specifically when we talk about God and His essence, uh, because we are creature and God is creator, and beyond our mind and beyond our capability to think over it, to think of it. That's why we don't know how to describe God in the best way. For this reason, sometimes we are unable. For example, today, I mean, regarding this attribute, okay, we say God is eternal. So what does it mean? If you're asked, you would answer, yeah, God is eternal. It means God is the first, right? God is the first. So imagine about the concept of first and second and third, okay? And or you say sometimes, yeah, that God exists from beginning. So you have to imagine time, because of we are surrounded by time, we are limited by time, we are not out of time, and even it is not possible for us to imagine something beyond time, right? That's why, for example, if we want to talk about something that happened in the past, you say the past tense, and when you want to talk about something in the future, you have to use some future tense and so on. Okay, we are surrounded, we are completely restricted by time, but Allah the Almighty is beyond time. Okay, it is really great point. For this reason, when we say He is the first, okay, He is not the second, He is not the third, absolutely He is the first, it means He has no beginning. Catch it? He has no beginning. He's beyond time. When we say He is the last, okay, there is no any death, there is no any demise at all. Rather, He's alive. He's alive forever. So do you know forever? Even this concept, forever. This term, it is not a perfect term, but we have to use this kind of term to convey our intention. Okay, so we say He is the last. It means He has no end. Okay, no beginning, no end. He's completely, which is called sarmadi. Okay, sarmadi or sarmad. Catch it? Has no beginning, has no end. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi في النهج البلاغة 162 sermon, he says, please listen up, ليس لأوليته ابتداء. However, to be a pupil of Amir al-Mu'mineen is really hard, But please listen, let's listen to him. ليس لأوليته ابتداء ولا لأزليته انقضاء هو الأول لم يزل والباغي بلا أجل. When Amir al-Mu'minin wants to when Amir al-Mu'minin wants to describe God, he states ليس لأوليته ابتداء. So you cannot imagine even the first point, sometime that you can call it, yeah, it is the first time that God, for example, was there. No, 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 not at all. So, but before that, how about before that? God is the creator of time. That's what He is beyond time. God is creator of everything. Everything you can imagine. Ma siwa Allah, which is called Ma siwa Allah. When you refer to Quran, you can see huwa al-awwal. He describes himself. Really nice one. Huwa al-awwal wal-akhir. Right? Huwa al-awwal wal-akhir wal-zahir wal-batin. Right? وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Who is the first? Who is the last? But it doesn't mean first in comparison to something or somebody. No, 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 no. There is no any comparison at all. If you compare God to something or somebody or some objects, make sure you're going to astray. Rather, you have to just imagine God as al-wujudul kamil, that is completely eternal. Even I can't imagine, even I'm unable to imagine when He was God and when is the first point of God, right? The first, the beginning point of God is where is when exactly, and the end point is when exactly. We cannot imagine. It is out of our mind. It is the first point and the first attribute of God, which is called Allah is Azali. Okay, Azali, or Allah is eternal. The second attribute of God regarding this classification, in Sifatul Zat and Sifatul Thubuti, is omnipotence. God is omnipotent. Or in Arabic expression and terminology, we can say al-qadir. God is al-qadir. It means everything is under His supervision. هو القادر على كل شيء. Catch it? It means He is okay. He can do whatever He wishes. You cannot imagine something beyond His capability. That's why we should call it omnipotent, right? Or almighty, or all powerful, right? Right? All. It means there is nothing to imagine beyond His ability and capability. And he's not obliged. Another point is he's not obliged and forced to do this and that. Okay, as you see, some sects, some religions, even as you know, that believe God uh, has to do something, right? And there is no any free will for God, and He has to do this, He has to do that. But we are, as a Muslim, states and believe that no, no, no. God is completely free to do this or to do that. Okay? No one can oblige. No one can force, can make Him do something or to not something. Okay? As you know, and in Quran, Allah states, إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا فَيَقُولُ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُنْ. There is a really burning question. Listen up. Sometimes you hear this question, and probably you've heard this one so far, and you're familiar with, and someone probably asks you, could God ask, could God create a heavy stone that he couldn't lift it? Could God make a circle? Okay, make a circle, create a circle, and simultaneously this circle is triangle? Or could God created something like himself? Do you know what kind of question? Could God create something like himself? Could God create a really huge and massive stone? Or another question. Could God create and put all universe and galaxies, right, without changing size, without changing and altering the size? Okay, all this universe, imagine all this universe and galaxies, moon, sun, and stars. Okay, put it to the egg without changing the size of the universe and size the egg. Could God do it? If you say absolutely no, so you're going to limit the power of God. That's why God is not powerful. God is not powerful. So God is created something like him. If you say yes, so there is something like God. So God is not ahad, right? God has a peer. God is not one. If you say no, so God is not almighty. God is not omnipotent. This question is a kind of bearing questions, or this kind of chain questions we face from time to time, that probably you know the answer, or probably you don't know the answer. And inshallah, for the next session, we are gonna talk over and discuss about the meaning of al-qadir, the meaning of omnipotence. Okay, omnipotence of God, what does it mean? And we are going to answer such a this questions. How can imagine? And if it is it okay, again, could God created a huge stone, a heavy stone that he couldn't lift it even? Okay, so thank you, dear brothers, for your attention today. As I told you, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not in my city and I'm out of city. That's why my time is kind of limited, and I think it is sufficient for today. If you have any question, I'm at your complete disposal to answer your questions, but not the last question. Just mull this over, reflect upon it, and try to answer it by yourself. Okay, try to think about it. Why not? At tadabbur is really required. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.